We are live. Or recording. We're recording.
We're recording.
Yeah. All right.
The sun is kind of strong.
It is.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers, baby.
Cheers.
Thanks for the sound effects.
All right. Well, we're doing our John and Tara podcast. Subscribe. We're going biking after this. Mountain biking. Single track.
In
tearing
the mountains
it up.
of Minnesota.
The mountains of Minnesota. Absolutely.
Some great hills. We actually went to Lebanon Hills yesterday for the first time, and for those of you who don't know it or know the area, I think it's the best track. Well, in southern Minnesota, we've been to Duluth, and Duluth has some awesome tracks, but we didn't, get to know all of them. Those are pretty awesome too.
Yeah.
But I think Lebanon's our favorite in the area, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they've really gotten better.
Yeah, I like Lebanon.
Lebanon
Lots of
Hills.
obstacles. Lebanon Hills.
Well,
in
and
Eagan, Minnesota.
a lot of natural obstacles, not just the man-made ones.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay, John, what's been on your mind since last week? Well, I know one thing
Stuff.
we can jump into.
Yeah.
So we have our car ride talks and stuff, and you're like, ask me about
Oh, you're
guys.
gonna go there right away.
Yeah, let's dive into it. the don't take my toys scenario.
Grown men, little boys, don't take my toys.
Yeah.
If I have to get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of whining in the manosphere about being married and then getting divorced and women taking stuff. But the awareness is out there now more than ever that what the state does, how assets are split and that kind of stuff. And I realize guys are like, well, I worked, in our marriage, I worked, you stayed home for 20 some years, 18, 19 years, and I worked, and I was out of the house 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. And I understand, guys are like, well, this is, all the stuff I made during that time, I made it for me. But, the reality of it is that most guys would not make the living they make if they didn't have a good woman in their corner, because you don't think about it as much. There's a lot of fun to be had when you're making a lot of money. And when you're out doing whatever it is you're doing, there's just I don't see guys, a lot of single guys saving it up. I see single guys
Just spending it.
Spending, having fun, buying things that depreciate, buying assets that depreciate, that technically aren't very good assets, boats and cars and stuff like that. Sometimes cars appreciate, but for the most part,
not usually.
Well, if you're having fun with them, you're driving them. So
yeah.
Motorcycles, that kind of stuff. So yeah,
your argument there is that if they were single, they would be spending that money likely anyways.
No, I don't really have an argument. I just have some observations about it. But when you get married, you know what you're getting into, and I realize divorce does blindside people, not just guys, men and women, right? Nowadays they say women file for divorce more often than men, and that's fine. Statistics are great. It's good to know that kind of stuff. But I think that guys are not as attentive as they should be. They're not thinking that they're going to get divorced, so they get into a real comfortable way of being, and it's it's important if you're in a relationship, to be in the relationship. And if you do decide to get divorced, or if she hits you with a divorce, some of the problem is that the guys are fighters, right? Guys are up for an adventure, they're up for a challenge, they're up for a fight. So a lot of times they're blindsided, they're devastated, but then they get into fight mode, right? And I would say if you get served with papers, you find whatever split you can, right? Maybe it's 2/3 a third, 2/3 to the guy, a third to the woman. I don't fully believe that it should be 50-50. I believe that the woman should get enough to show some assets out of the marriage. She should be able to take care of herself for a while if she didn't have a job, until she gets a job. If there's kids involved, you need to take care of your kids 100%. Not 100% all the time of you paying for everything, but if they were at your house, you'd pay for everything anyway. So I think there should be some sort of a decent way of the dad taking care of what he needs to take care of for his kids. And most people nowadays live check to check, even if they're living in a nice house and all this stuff. Maybe they got 6 months worth of savings for payments or whatever, but most people don't have 6 months worth of expenses for their entire layout, right?
So let's kind of go back a step here.
Yeah.
So when we first we were getting engaged, we were engaged technically, we talked about a prenup, and I think I brought it up, and you were like, no. And why don't you explain some of your reasoning behind saying no? Because it's out there these days that guys, make sure you're getting a prenup, especially if you're making more money, because i.e. you want to protect your stuff, right?
Marriage, to me, marriage is more serious than that. And yes, I have been married before. I've been married 3 other times, but I've only had one wife, and that was you. So total, I've been married 4 times. I was a single father with sole custody of my son, and what happened early on in my life messed up my thought process, because I came from a very solid household. I'm married. My parents are still married. My parents have only been with each other sexually. I think my mom dated. No, she didn't. Maybe it was my dad that dated. No. Okay, here's the funny story.
Yeah.
I thought somebody dated because my dad broke up with my mom after they got together for like 3 days because he went to school.
Yeah, he went to
a technical college. And there was a gal there that he thought, that he was gonna get with. So he broke up with my mom because she was younger than him and still in high school while he was in technical college, and so he thought this gal was going to get with him, but he found out she didn't want anything to do with him that way, so he got back together with my mom in 4 days. Anyway, funny story. That's the only hiccup they've ever had in their relationship, and so that's what I come from. My parents don't drink other than maybe a glass of wine and a wine cooler nowadays, right? But when I was growing up, they didn't drink. They didn't smoke. They don't smoke. They didn't and don't swear, and they never argued in front of me and my brother. And so the whole process of me thinking that I knew what a relationship was very wholesome, was very structured, very standardized, very, very good, very great. And
would you say that it caused some naivete also?
Well, you don't have to go to war to find out that killing people hurts your soul. You don't have to be in a fire to realize that your skin burns. I don't think that's being naive. I think you just don't know what you don't know, and maybe the term naive means you don't know what you don't know.
Well,
but
yeah, being naive is you don't know what you don't know. Being ignorant is you know the difference, but you choose not to listen to that knowing. So
what I was doing was I was looking to have an intact family, because I was a single dad with sole custody of my son, was with me 100% of the time. His mother took off, and so what ended up happening was I started searching for a mother for my son. Obviously I was attracted to these women, but I thought, I need a mom in his life. I need to have a wife, so we're an intact family. And so in that sense, yeah, I was naive. I was, naive sounds bad. I was just shooting for an ideal,
Yeah.
And I missed.
And not a bad ideal.
No, not at all. But I missed things along the way, and I wouldn't change it. I absolutely would not change it at all. I needed to go through those experiences. My son needed to see that. He needed to be, go through those experiences. And, I was married and divorced in under a year each time, because I don't stick around in bad situations for long. And they turned on me. The situation turned, and, they thought they wanted something. I thought I wanted something. They were different than I thought, and maybe I was different than they thought. And here I am now with you for 24 years now. So that stuff is relative ancient history, right? And I just think that I wouldn't trade those experiences. I didn't have to do any child support or any spousal support. I didn't require them to do any child support. Obviously, my son wasn't theirs, but there's been stepdads that have been stuck with support and that type of stuff. And so I just kind of look at it like, go out and date, spend time with people that you're dating. Yeah, you brought up a prenup, and I wouldn't get married under a prenup. I mean, let's say I had, and I had, when we met, I had decent amount of money. That was 24 years ago. I was making almost $40 an hour when I was a tool maker, and that was 24 years ago. That's pretty good. So, I had decent amount of money that I had put into a business, and I had a business, so I had things to lose. I was kind of brokish at the point in time when we got married, but I
like that, to make it short of that.
I was brokish. I was brokish when we got married, but I had put all my money into my business, and had spent a year building that business, and put roughly $65,000 into taking that year to build my business and live off of that money, and so yeah.
I remember you saying specifically that having a prenuptial was like betting on divorce. Like, it was almost like you're planning on it.
Yeah. I mean, people will say, well, it's like wearing a seatbelt. You're not planning on getting in a car accident, but it could happen. I mean, you can get blindsided in a marriage, which I had 3 other times. I was very blindsided. I didn't get married to get divorced. I got divorced relatively quickly, because very quickly things went downhill, and there was counseling and that kind of stuff with each one of them, trying to figure out what's going on. But back then, when I was a single dad, women regularly that would talk to me when they found out my child's mother had taken off would say directly, what did you do to her? Because back then they couldn't, that was 32 years ago, they couldn't imagine that a mom would leave a child, and so it was actually kind of tough. There was things said to me that, and I never really defended myself. I just say, no, well, she did what she did, and that's it. I wasn't going to tell anybody a deep story about anything.
Yeah, you don't owe them an explanation.
Right. But I didn't think I was going to get divorced each time, and I could look back and say maybe I wasn't thinking deep enough, and maybe, our world is set up around having insurance for things that happen, wearing our seatbelt just in case, wearing a helmet on a motorcycle just in case. Throw it. Yep. I didn't know if it was a recluse or not. You just pulled the spider off her hat, and it could have been a brown recluse, so I was just like, throw it. Oh, it's coming back.
Well, it's interesting that you,
Jeez.
having gone through previous divorces were not all like, I need to protect my stuff, I need to get this in writing,
I wasn't bitter. I was hurt for a while. But what I realized was I made bad decisions. And that's, when you can come to the conclusion that you made a bad decision, that it wasn't just a terrible person, that person was mean or evil or they deceived me. Mm-hmm. When you can say to yourself, I made a bad decision, you have different realizations in your life. You all of a sudden then you start to calculate how to make good decisions. You start thinking to yourself, I need to think about what I do. I need to be structured in how I act. I need to figure things out. And I had a bad picker. I picked women that seemingly I was attracted to, that were attractive to me, and I picked women that were attracted to me. And and I thought, I need this for my son and me, and I needed to have a good structured life. And then when I finally threw my hands up, I literally was on my knees one night next to my bed, and I wasn't praying, but I kind of had broken down, and I kind of fell to the floor a little bit, kind of on the edge of my bed, and it was like a prayer. And I just said, if there's somebody out there, you're gonna have to bring her to me. And I didn't say God, I didn't say anything like that, although I do know that there's a God. I have knowledge, I have experiential knowledge. I'm not just a believer. I basically knew who I was talking to, but it was just a conversation. You're gonna have to bring her to me, and because I'm done trying, and that may or may not have been the best thing to say, but you showed up, and on a cloud, descending with a halo and rays of light around you. And we met, and I wasn't even after you. I wasn't attracted to you per se, as like, hey, I should go out with her. You were somebody that was nice, decent, kind. I learned about you. You had a great work ethic. You were cute. You're beautiful now. You were cute then, and yeah. And then we met. You give the timeline.
I started going to your gym early January, like as if it was a New Year's resolution, but it wasn't. That's just when I found your gym finally. In early January 2000, we started dating in June. We got engaged in September and married in November, all in the year 2000, forever ago. Well, I remember you saying, as a part of that, kind of as that part of the conversation / petitionary prayer to God, I think that God was probably so familiar to you in a way that it was conversative in a way. I remember you saying before that when you stopped looking for a mother to your son, that really changed things as well.
That was the big mistake, looking for a mother. Yeah, that was the big mistake, that I thought I was filling a role for my life and his life, for us as a group. And
what would you counsel a younger man if he already has a child or a couple children and is thinking I need to find a woman who can be a mother to my child, whether the child's mother is already in the picture or just is not a great example? What would you say?
Well, it's going to have to be a woman that has her own place. You can't just move a woman in, because a lot of women will think they want to play house, but it's a whole different story when it's not your kid. And for guys too, guys know this, if they've ever dated a woman that had kids, you think, oh yeah, a little guy, I'm going to be a kind of big brother, maybe a uncle-ish kind of, and then I'll be a stepdad kind of, and then I'll, and we'll see, right? And it's very ubiquitous in our society nowadays, but it's a very tenuous situation. You and I got into it, and I have described this to many guys. You and I got into it, and I told you, you know, you don't have to try and be his mother. You just need to be a good example as a woman. And that probably took a lot of stress off, you know, even if you were like all into, hey, I'm going to be a stepmom. I'm going to be, you know, hopefully someday he calls me mom, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, he was already 11 and almost 12. So I just intuitively sensed it was a different stage of life. You know, if he had been 3, it would have been totally different.
Yeah.
But he was already, you know, had already developed to a large degree his own personality. You know, he already called your mom actually. She had played that role really throughout his life. And I didn't want to interrupt that. Like, there was no need to try to take that position, either, you know, trying to or forcefully or even just like implied. I was just like, I'm going to be who I am. And whatever that ends up being to him is what it'll end up being, you know. And like you said, being at least the example of a great woman, or good at least.
Well, an example of a good woman is what a young guy needs to see. A young guy needs a mother for a certain amount of years, and then and then maybe later in life a little bit. You know, I'm not saying they don't need a mother. I'm just saying, you know,
changes
from my own experience. You know. It's not like a little boy, you know, a 18-year-old is running to his mom like he did when he was 4, you know. And but an 18-year-old will ask his dad a lot of questions like he did when he was 4 to 8, you know, years old.
It shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think, you know, why would he call your mom mom? Well, both you and your brother, who he was around a lot, would call your mom mom, and she did play that role. But then it was at the shifting point when I came into the scenario. Yeah,
majorly. He stayed at my parents' quite a bit, you know, and she'd put him to bed, rock him to sleep. She'd, you know, when he was over there, she'd read books and, you know, all that type of stuff. And yeah. So no, what would I counsel a guy? I have talked to lots of guys about this, and you know, once they're dating, I talk about paying attention to behaviors. You know, once you're dating a woman, and then naturally see what she does. You know, if you're making lunch for your kid or your kids and she joins in, you know, she doesn't just sit at the table with them, and it's fine either way. If she's occupying them while you're making lunch, you got to be observant, right? Yeah. It's not just that it's, you know, like nowadays they're trying to say, well, the woman's role is to be in the kitchen and make a sandwich and well, you know, to be quite honest, a lot of times, let's just be honest, you can't keep up with me in the kitchen. You know, if like this morning, I made steak and eggs, you know, and it was like, steak is on, eggs, you were doing your morning Bible study, and you walked into the kitchen and I handed you a plate of steak and eggs, you know, and it's like, you know,
we're going biking and you need your protein.
And coffee was made, you know, and the butter coffee was made, and you know, I'm very organized when it comes to that type of stuff. I'm very assembly line like, you know. And I love cooking. You know, I was a chef for 4 years, and
that's why I'm always like, get in the kitchen. You do it better.
Yeah, well, you know, you cook very well also, and you do cook a lot, and I cook a lot, and you know, it's a.
And sometimes the sink really shows that both me and you
we're
are
both cooking. Well, that's why we have a giant 3-tub stainless steel sink. It's a commercial sink.
Yeah, it's a commercial sink with the drain pans on each side.
The big tub and the sprayer over the top, and
when we move, we're gonna have to do something similar because
we're never gonna have a different.
We can't have a regular sink again.
We'll rip the kitchen apart and do an industrial kitchen. There's no way I can live without that.
Or at least the sink, you know. I like nice cabinets and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, tangent.
Yeah, you know, we can have nice cabinets. That's fine. But you know, it's. If I'm talking to a guy, usually they're asking questions. Usually it starts out they're complaining, and if the complaints are of such a magnitude that it doesn't sound fixable to me, it sounds like this couple with his kids are in a habit. They're in a rote behavior system. I just say break up. You know, I just say cut the rope, let her fall, get her out of your house, that type of stuff. Most guys don't do that. Most guys don't listen. They think that they could work on it, because guys are fixers, guys are worker honor thingers, It's like
fix her uppers.
Fix her uppers, yeah. If they're married and it's the same situation, I do say get divorced. Quite often, guys don't listen to that either. And when I give them my history, they can't see going rapid fire through things, right? They can't see, because I don't, I tend to be able to see the development of the situation. Like, I'll listen to the story and I can see where it's going. They seem to not be able to see where it's going.
Yeah, well,
or they think, or they're justifying it for certain reasons. They have a kid, a certain age, they want to wait. Or, if they're married and not to the mother and father are married of the child, oftentimes I will say get divorced because of the level of problems. They haven't let anybody else in their life see the problems. They've only told me, and I will say, if you go sit down with everybody they're going to say the same thing I'm saying. You need to get divorced. Because you can create a worse situation in a household for a child being married and then it would be if you were divorced and separated from each other. And really it is, when you have a kid, it is the focus on the child. That's paramount. And so I do have advised quite a few things, but I say, you got to live your life, you got to deal with it. You're going to go home and deal with it, and tomorrow if you come back with the same complaint, or next week or whatever, I'm going to kind of say the same thing. I might be more extreme, like pack her stuff up, put it in her car, rent her a U-Haul, whatever, load it up, and when she gets home, tell her, here's the keys, drive it wherever you need to drive, because a lot of times there's corrupt mental processing in a lot of people nowadays. We used to call it mental illness. And people will put labels on it, they'll say this or that, and then a lot of these people will have victim narratives, right? They have their trauma that they went through, and a person feels bad for them, and then they think, well, she shared another trauma with me, so she's getting somewhere, and I'm like, no, she shared another trauma with you because she realized you were about to break up with her. And she's got a backpack full of traumas that she's going to keep bringing them out at different times when she doesn't have control. Because what did she get from her first trauma? She got an acquiescence to bad behavior, and you went with it. You acquiesced to her bad behavior, and now she brought out another trauma because the first one wore out, and then the second one wore out, and the third one wore out. By the third or fourth one, the guy's getting punched in the face. He's getting hit. He's getting stuff thrown at him. He's getting physically attacked, and it's because of the trauma. These types of women will bring up this trauma. I had this happen to me, and now you're doing it like that guy did it, and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, you should probably go find somebody that doesn't do that to you then. So
there's so much there.
It's the same story every time.
Tales of this time, is that what you're saying?
If a man treats you badly, get rid of him. If a woman treats you badly, get rid of her. I'm not saying get rid of him like the East River. I'm saying break up with him.
Unless you're part of the mafia.
Not that kind of get rid of. But you have to break it. You have to break the cycle.
So that was okay. On that, we met with one of my contractors the other day, and she made an observation I found really interesting. She's like, you two are people that, like, when something needs to be, and I'm paraphrasing, this is what I heard. She's like, when things need to be wrapped up, ended, like we're moving on. She's like, you guys are so good at that. And, because we're talking kind of like how we need complementary skills in a team.
Yeah. And
she had recognized like that was something that she was kind of gleaning from us. And I think that was the case even now. I didn't have a very long, quote, dating career, but that was something that was really clear in me. There was never like oh, if I break up with this person, who am I going to have to choose from? And it's like, oh my God, there's so many people. And it wasn't even like I'm the hottest stuff around, you know, that I'll have my pickings, you know. It was just like, well, there's a lot of people around, and
a lot of guys.
A lot of guys, yeah.
You have to say guys.
A lot of guys.
Because I know that you don't like women out in the least.
That's funny. Not in that way, for sure.
Yeah.
But I was just like, okay, next, you know, but not like next,
Next.
you know. But I think that's true for both of us. You know, it sounds like we both didn't have that fear of like, if I let this one go, you know, am I gonna
No, I never thought I wouldn't date again. I mean, I swore off dating at that one point, but I never thought I couldn't date. There was, you know, I was a athletic guy that was doing things in public. It wasn't like I was just going to working out in my garage. I had classes going on. I was teaching across the country. I was doing seminars and demos and going places and talking to hundreds of people a week, you know, and turning down women on a regular basis. And I don't say that egotistically. I just say that I was in opportune positions everywhere I went, you know.
So someone listening to this, I can imagine, be like, well, you know, John, I'm not that hot of stuff, you know. And, you know, and that's why I emphasize that I wasn't really anything particularly special at that point in my life either, you know. But there was a sense in me like, the sooner I can move on, the better.
If you had walked by, I would never have looked at you once.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
And I'm not saying that to be derogatory or put you down in any way. I have what I thought I did early on. I thought I got to know people. I thought that I was a good judge of character, and I wasn't. And when I finally let go of those thoughts, let go of that process that I used, I slowed down. Now, me and you met in an opportune, you know, you came into my martial arts school. You were a good student, and you were around a lot. So I said to you, or you came to me and said, is there a way that I can do something for a deal, for a discount?
It might have been even like, I'd like to take all these classes, but this is all I can afford.
Right.
Probably.
Yes. You were looking for an opportunity for yourself to expand your training and I said, absolutely. You hand out, I think I gave you 50% off classes for handing out flyers, you know, every week, you know, and so I'd give you a stack of flyers, and you would go to, back then, we should explain. Flyers are a piece of paper that look like an advertisement, that have a picture of somebody doing something. In martial arts, it would be like, you know, I'm doing my pose, or I got a knife, or I got a stick, or a sword, or I'm kicking a Thai pad, you know, some couple people grappling, you know, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a full color picture, or the whole background is a picture, and then there's text.
Yeah, they were black and white, but on colored paper.
Nowadays they call it an infographic.
Yes.
And then you would walk around town, and you'd walk into stores, and you'd see if they had a bulletin board.
Yep.
If they had a bulletin board,
cork board,
you'd find the manager, the owner, or you'd leave it with an employee and say, I'd like to put this up on your cork bulletin board.
Yeah.
And they would put a pin in it, and it would hang a piece of paper.
And you would pray that it didn't fall down, or someone would cover it.
Or your rival martial arts school didn't take it down as they walked through. Yeah. And then we would go into bookstores or magazine shops.
Yeah.
And we would drop the flyers into martial art magazines, or health and fitness magazines, or gun magazines, or you know, just women's magazines, anything. We'd put the self-defense flyers in the women's magazines. You know, you had to physically
target marketing.
You had to physically go places.
Yeah.
So I mean, we got in trouble one time. This is a hilarious story. So when we first opened up, I was looking for places. So we ended up going to multiple apartment buildings, and we ended up we got shut down pretty quick knocking on doors in apartment buildings, right? Because it's like there's 400 families in this building, right? So let's go hand out flyers, right? And then we went, so that didn't work out so hot. So then we went to like a townhome complex.
Yeah.
And we put flyers in every single mailbox, right, without permission. Yeah, that didn't work out good either, because I got a call because everybody had taken my flyer and threw it. So my business phone number and address was littering their neighborhood.
Oh.
So we had to go back there and we had to clean up all those flyers. They were all over the neighborhood. People purposely dropped them in their yard, dropped them on the street, dropped them down on the highway, dropped them everywhere. They were pissed that they got this direct marketing in their mailbox, and I didn't know. I was just trying to promote a business, you know. And we didn't have the internet. We didn't have, I mean, we had the internet, but it wasn't like it is now. You know, the internet was for email. There was websites.
But you had to know the direct URL. You said there wasn't really a search function.
It was hard to search. There was search, but it was hard. and there was bulletin boards. You know, so you'd have to find a bulletin board on the web in your local area and go in and start a conversation and then mention, you know, or talk and say, hey, we're doing this, or we're going to be. So it was tough direct marketing on bulletin boards, right? So we would say, we're doing a demo in the park in Chaska or in Anoka or in Chanhassen. We're going to be in the park on this day with this festival. Come and see us. You know, we're doing martial arts in the park, you know, and you know, I had a class. We would just do a class in the park every week, you know, because that would be like marketing for cars driving by and stuff. So yeah, it wasn't as easy as it is now to get in touch with thousands of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I was. You know, I was out in the park, and you know, we were moving, and mostly it was guys, and we were all in shape, and we're all doing dynamic stuff. And what do women want? They want a man that can support them. They want a man that can defend them. They want a man that is in shape. They want a man that's funny. And if you hung out with the martial art guys, they were all that. Every single one of them was funny. Every single one of them was in shape. Every single one of them could defend a woman. Every single one of them generally had a good job. You know, we were out in the suburbs, so generally had a good job and made money. And we're all of them relatively were good looking. You know, because when you work out, you've got a physicality that looks good. Plus, if you have any traits, you know, symmetrically or good rugged looks, you know, you look good. So.
Well, especially that type of working out. Like one of the arts that you taught and trained was Thai boxing, and holy cow, is that a workout? But even most people, if they start sweating, working out hard, they'll not only trim down, but I mean, when someone trims down in their face and they're sweating so much,
their skin looks better.
You're cleaning yourself out.
Your toxins are being flushed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of like sometimes when you look at old-fashioned pictures, you're like, wow, these are like, you know, these look like sturdy people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
skinny but sturdy.
So you said that, you know, if I had walked by on the street, you wouldn't have given me a second look, or maybe even a first look. Is that what you said? But
I've never been that kind of guy. I've never been the kind of guy that's oogling women. You know, so I don't look. Sometimes there's something catches your eye, right? You know, the flip of the hair, the blonde hair. It's something that catches every guy. You know, bright blonde hair on a woman. Long blonde hair, right? That catches a guy every time. But it's not like he's like, oh, you know, it's just like you see it, right? It's like if a purple elephant flew by, you know, you'd see it.
Well,
you're like, what the
cardinal, a male cardinal.
Yeah, you see, a cardinal or a blue jay. It's a news of difference, right? It's a drastic contrast.
So I've heard, and I believe this. I mean, this is more so what I intuitively did, that, you know, you don't show the guy everything, right? You were modest. You're not necessarily going to get that first or second look, but you'll get the actual quality attention later.
Well, what I was going to say is,
if someone is actually interested.
I got to know you. I got to know your personality because we were exchanging business, right? So I got to know your personality. We had more conversations. I remember when you came in and you told me you were going to prom, right? You were a senior in high school when I met you, and you were going to prom. And I remember asking you, like, I don't remember if I said who's your date or who you going with or something, and you're like, no, I'm going by myself. And in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah. you weren't ending it, but I was also trying to get other guys to date you that were in the gym, you know. And I had told them, I said, this woman is going to make somebody a really good wife. You know, little did I know it was me.
Well, I technically went alone. I went with a group of friends, but like the pictures I had taken, it was just me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's
fine.
That was perfect.
It's all good, you know. You guys had watched the TV show Friends and realized that everybody can hang out together.
Yep. That was the era. So, I think
the message to guys is look deeper.
Well, and the message to girls is if you don't get that attention right away, it's not necessarily about the first bit of attention, you know, and putting your boobs out there and showing everything, but giving him the chance to actually look deeper.
Now, ladies, if you do want to put your boobs out there, nobody's complaining.
No one's complaining, but they may not go any further.
Well, you're going to get the wrong attention. They will go further if they can. You're going to get the wrong attention every time.
Well, it'll
because if you're showing it off to the world, the guy doesn't. The man is not going to feel special with you. If you show it off to the world, the man thinks it's on display, it's being advertised, it's available, right? It's something she wants you to see, so she's okay with you looking. And and you're getting the wrong attention if you're looking for a long-term relationship.
Well, what's really interesting is like each step along the way, I was making these decisions, not checking in with you, and not like if I went with someone to prom, how would you feel about that?
Right.
You know, I was already deciding in myself how to conduct myself.
Yeah, you weren't like, I have to have a date or people are going to judge me, or, you know, and that showed confidence to me. You know, and I wasn't like, when you went to prom, I think you stopped by and showed me your dress.
Probably.
Yeah. And you looked cute. You did look pretty, you know, and I was like, you know, it didn't register to me like, oh, I'm going to go out with her. But there were all those little things along the way led up to me and you ending up being married.
You want to know something? I don't know if
Go
I
ahead.
ever shared this with you.
What?
I wanted to ask you to go with me.
Oh my God!
But
I would have said no.
Well, but that's the thing is, I not only didn't want to be said no to by you, but it was like, okay, he's 30 years old. This is probably just like out of. I don't even know if they would allow it. Like if they had an age limit.
Yes,
something.
everybody. I am 12 years older than you.
Right. And so I didn't because again, but it's another testament to think things through.
Yeah.
You know, sleep on it a few nights.
Yeah. Don't just go with your internal drive. You know, you're going to make better decisions if you sleep on it, think about it, process it, and you probably didn't bring it up to other people. You know, because it was too much of a disparity in age. You know, the age gap was too much at that time.
I might have brought it up to Alicia, the Italian exchange student that lived with us, because we were pretty close.
Interesting.
We did a lot of stuff together. So I might have just, you know, mentioned it, kind of like girlfriend kind of talking about it, but not like, should I do this? But just kind of having someone to talk with about it.
Yeah. I do remember you saying when we were dating, when we were first dating, you had said something to some friends who had come to my school and had met me, and they were like, oh, he's so old or something like that, or what do you see in him, or why do you, and you were like, what don't you see in him?
Yeah.
And that is, to me, that is so important, right? That you need to know what you see in a person, don't go out with somebody because the world thinks they're beautiful, or your friends think they're great, or, you know, because your friends aren't going to be there for the rich or poor, the better or worse, the sickness and health. You know, you have to be so sold out to that thing that you want in a person, that you see in a person, that makes your, you know, butterflies in your stomach, it makes your heart flutter and that kind of thing, you know, makes your mind to go googly. You know, you got to be that's what carries you through the tough times. You know, if you just dated a guy that all your friends thought was hot, or
they'd be going
or
after him.
he's really into you, Tara. No, not even, but your women do this a lot. They sell out to their friends, right? Not to their relationship, right? And then they go to their friends with the problems in their relationship, and then their friends are like, yeah, he ain't shit anymore. He ain't worthless. He's worthless. He ain't blah, 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 right? You've heard it.
Or remember I told ya.
Exactly. So, I actually had people telling me, don't go out with her. I had women telling me, don't go out with you, because they wanted a friend of theirs to go out with me. But
No, the scenario.
I would never listen to women. As a guy, never get advice from a woman. Not a girlfriend. Like if I'm a guy, I talk to, and I have a girlfriend, and I'm having her approve you for marriage, never in a million years would I do that. Never. Because if I have a girlfriend, it's one of two things. I either like her or she likes me. And if I'm getting married to someone else, that means she likes me. And so she's going to do and say things that are going to taint my ability to see the true picture with you.
Well, and similarly with the girlfriend, like my friend, who was an acquaintance friend, not a close friend. I remember I met her somewhere, and it was just at the beginning of our relationship, and I was driving your truck. And I don't remember where we met, but she was like, nice truck. And I'm like, yeah, it's my boyfriend's. And I think she had met you somehow, I don't even remember. But that was when she was like, well, what do you see in him? And first of all, I was more practical about vehicles, especially then. And so like her commenting about the truck was even odd to me. I'm like, it's a regular truck. I mean, no offense, but
no, it was a
regular truck.
It was a Z71 extended cab. It was a special color, and it had a 350, and it was there's nothing wrong with the radio.
That's right. Well, it was a regular truck to me because I'd grown up.
It had a tape deck.
It was common in my area. Like all the guys had trucks.
Yeah,
like
it had a tape deck and a CD player.
Sweet.
Bam. All the accessories.
So just her commenting about the vehicle, first of all, I was like, all right, for me, in my mind. And then
she was Italian.
That wasn't
Oh,
her.
it wasn't the Italian. Okay.
No.
Okay.
So, but we weren't super close anyways. But I don't know, it's just one of those things. I think I was fortunate to just kind of have these moments of like, that's interesting. To not just go, oh, my friend said this, but to have my own mind about it.
Yeah.
And even if a friend was like, wow, what do you see in him? I'd be like, well, that's probably good that you're not all into him either, you know?
And my personality also is I would not listen to a guy. I don't get advice from anybody on relationships. Not my parents, maybe I should have earlier on with my parents, but they're not people that intrude. You're very hard pressed to get their opinion even when you ask them. So it's not a situation. They would be very reticent to give you their opinion.
Well, I'm not certainly an advocate of not listening to one's parents, but I'm glad that I didn't listen to my parents.
Well, and I'm not saying don't listen to your parents. I'm just saying I never asked my parents for advice. And I have on other things. I've talked to them about things I'm doing, but it's not like, what do you guys think I should do? It's like, here's what I'm doing. What do you guys think of that? Is there anything I'm missing? Can you guys think of anything else going forward? But I've always been a seriously, ever since I was a child, very, very independent person that is just doing my own thing all the time. Even when I was little, I was so independent, my mom couldn't really handle it. And she went to my dad's mom and said, what am I going to do with this kid? He's opinionated, he's strong. And I was like 3.5, 4 years old. And he won't do it if he doesn't want to. He will only do it if he wants to. Plus he's doing things before I even know he's doing it. And he's everywhere. And my grandma said, Nancy, it's okay. She said, it will serve him well someday. I know it's chaotic. I know it's stressful. You don't know what's going on, and then you do, and then you don't. And but my mom kept me around because of her cooking. I always came home for food. Yeah. And great insult to other people. I'll say this out loud. Great insult to other people. I would eat before I went over to other people's house for dinner because their food was always shit. Their cooking was shit. I mean, they could take beautiful, wonderful food and just turn it into shit. You know, it's, rubbery chicken, tough steaks, hot dishes that just taste like mishmash, sauces poured together. I mean, cakes that you could tell they used Crisco and margarine and, and just hard frosting that like stuck together in your mouth,
Yeah.
like
and coated everything.
Yeah, coated your teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom would offer cookies and she'd hold out a plate, and if it was me or two of us or three of us or four of us, the whole plate was gone. Didn't matter. I'd just take the plate out of her hand and leave. My mom would actually make 2 batches of cookies because she knew I would eat the whole batch that day. Yeah.
And then freeze the other.
It's amazing I'm not 400 pounds the way she cooked.
Well, you burned it off, obviously.
And it was all wholesome, good ingredients, everything made from scratch. No box cake mixes, no canned vegetables, but, most of the time fresh, but sometimes canned. Some things you could only get in cans during certain times of the season.
So we got a comment on one of our videos lately, just basically that, nice advice, but there's a lot of good advice out. There's a lot of advice out there, and some of it works, some of it doesn't. The thing is that there's so many people coming from different angles. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. And good thing, you're lucky that you're not dating in today's day and age.
So it was a correct comment, but it was nebulous.
Yeah, I think it was correct, and I had thought about also that, especially as I listen to what's out there about dating and marriage, dating for marriage, right? That it does sound like there's all sorts of angles, right? And that's kind of the trick, though, is that it used to be like your dating was more for your area. Like you could learn from your parents or your aunts and uncles, cousins, maybe older cousins, about dating because you were in the similar pool.
Let's
right?
talk about.
But just a second.
Okay.
But what's out there these days, like you can listen to Sadia Khan, which I think she has some really great advice, but she'll admit herself that she's in a very different demographic, who she's primarily consulting and talking to. She lives in Dubai. She's around extremely wealthy people, and so that advice, well, at the core of it, I think that is what is good about some of her advice, is the core stuff, the core human behaviors and principles. But there are exceptions culturally, age group wise, and
financial
so
status.
Financial status.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you have to narrow in on listening to maybe who has the relationship or who's coaching for where you're headed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you, I forgot what I was saying. I was going to say, let's talk about something, but.
So I think it's helpful, to know what's out there, but it's like, I thought of this could be a way of kind of training, right? Where, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we can come back to the training, but I was going to say our life experiences and our stories, I think, are great training, right? So let's talk about how you decided to move into my apartment. I was gone for 30 days. I was at an immersion training in Colorado for NLP. Yep. And you decided to move in.
Let me take a quick break and then I'll reminisce and
Well,
share.
hold on a second. We can't. I gotta hook this back up. So now you made a point where I have to edit.
Sorry.
Dang it.
Well,
you should have said, here's our discussion. You should have said, I'm going to take a break in a little bit. Let's finish talking about this, and then you can pause it.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to concentrate that well.
Oh.
So.
All right.
I should have said it sooner.
That's what you should have said.
Yes.
See? And you see what I said to Tara, and you see how she accepted it? Pretty awesome, huh?
Okay, before we get going, I got something funny for you.
What are we doing?
So there's these like funny things out there on Instagram and stuff about people's names. So like the rooster that goes Brian. I'm not going to totally mimic it. Brian! Brian! So there's this for sale sign over there. Someone's doing an open house, and the person's name, you want to guess?
Brian.
Deborah!
Deborah.
So it's the rooster that's crowing, but they make it a person's name. And there's certain things like that you just cannot see someone's name without thinking that it's like Blake, right?
Balake.
Balake. Like forever, that is in my mind.
Key and
now.
Peele.
So I just had to share that funny with you, because that's what you do in a loving relationship. You make sure to share.
You share
the
funny things.
Yeah.
Send memes when you're on the toilet. So how did you decide to, and what was your methodology when you moved into my apartment?
So I'm quite sure we talked about it. It wasn't just like, surprise, I moved in. We talked about it.
Okay. I don't remember.
So I was living with my parents, and I was still debating whether to go to college, or really at that point it was probably more like which college.
Mm-hmm.
But I was starting to do the math and think more deeply even whether to go. So I don't remember the exact process, but I'm just going to kind of go back to the time. So I was probably already thinking, well, I'm going to be moving out of my parents anyways. You know, what does it hurt to live, even though I knew it was not right in a way to be playing house.
I don't think you did at that point.
I was.
You think you did?
I was, yes. But I was more excited about a life and potential with you, and I think it was probably like, well, I was probably thinking, tried on for size in a way. Like, since I was considering college and actually doing the math, you know, what would this look like? Because I thought I was at a point of transition anyways. And so
that means something different these days.
So, you know, I could have very easily just been like, that was fun, you know, I'm off to college now, you know, 2 months later. So I think that was probably more my reasoning. I wasn't at home at my parents' a lot anyways, and
I was closer to where you worked. Were you using me?
I don't know if it was even as lot. I think it was just like I was already in an in-between state.
I was a Southwest Transit hub for you.
That's about all I can really think of and remember. But I did not surprise you. I did not.
No, you said I'd like to move in.
And my parents, like, eventually, I was taking backpacks full of stuff there, and they're like, "Are you moving out?" And I'm like, "Yep."
As you kept going.
Yep. And it was really only a matter of months that we were.
Well, they knew we were in a relationship already, so they probably assumed what was going on.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it wasn't as great of a story as I thought.
Well,
I was trying to get your thought process. Evidently, you're just trying me on for size, and
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there was. That was probably one of my more, I would say, risky decisions. Just kind of like Hail Mary, not a Hail Mary, but kind of like, we'll give it a try. You know, everything else I think was more thought out.
Well, there wasn't a big risk. You know, I was extremely stable. You know, very consistent. You know, accomplished and good looking, and I was, you know, had my stuff that I was doing, and you knew about it, and you know, I didn't go to college, but I did do things like 30-day immersion course in NLP that they don't offer anymore. That ended shortly after I went there. That's actually where Anthony Robbins went, was to NLP Comprehensive. He did the whole program there too. And so, you know, it was a very reputable place to go for a, whatever you want to call it, post-secondary education. I don't know what they call it, you know.
So I just finished listening to a book. I think it's something like A Better Life, or How to Live a Better Life. And it's by Suzanne Banker, and apparently she's been in this space for quite a while, promoting and teaching young women or women the more traditional values, right? And how to live, I'm totally paraphrasing in my own imagination what this means. But basically, like, don't buy what feminism has been trying to dish out for so many years. She's probably an early Gen Xer, more like, I think, my parents' age. It sounds like it. And she's like, I feel sorry for the millennials, Gen Zs, who've been taught, to get a good education, get a job, and, there's nothing, being a homemaker and a mom is just throwing your life away, right? And she starts out by saying, your value is not in what you do in the marketplace. If you are simply a mom and a homemaker, that is enough. That is plenty of contribution. You've done plenty in this world. And I think she's one of the first that I've heard that recognizes that it is actually overwhelming to women to try to do it all. Like, we were taught and coached that you can have it all. And when you actually start trying to do it all, that is, have a career, have a significant relationship, have a nice home, and by nice I mean even just like a clean home or tidy,
yeah.
and then have a family, and then try to have relationships. Like, it is way too much. And
all you had to do was talk to a guy. Women didn't need to wait for a woman, 40 years after feminism to figure out what was going on. They just had to talk to a guy.
But there are men that are teaching women, their dads, I'm saying specifically, that are teaching women to do this.
To do what?
To get the education, get the career, take care of yourself.
Those guys are retarded.
Rather than teaching their daughter, it's okay if you go to beauty school. That's something that you can go back to after you've been home for a while. But here's kind of where I'm going on with this, and I want to hear your thought on this too, because I think that what I've heard guys' complaints about women, like she just keeps nagging. She's just like always discontent and blah blah blah. And I'm not placing blame. I'm just saying this is like the chemistry of what's happened. Is I think women are overwhelmed. They've bought into the feminist agenda that they have to do and be it all, and so couples have created this big lifestyle, and I'm saying I'm learning this because I was raised this way.
Yep.
I've had to reprogram myself, and so I think women get a bad rap because the men are like, she's just always on me for this and that, or she's grumpy, but they're just overwhelmed, but won't give up, like won't give in to, I need to let go of this in my life, or they've already strapped themselves with so much debt or
you talk
obligation.
about it in your Wifey Wake Up podcast.
Yeah.
On YouTube, Wifey Wake Up.
Check it out.
On Wifey, it's actually the Wifey School YouTube page.
Yeah.
And
wifeyschool.us.
Yeah, and you talk about it extensively.
Well, I'm bringing it up here because I want to hear your vantage point as a guy.
Okay. I don't have a daughter. I can't fault guys for thinking like guys, right? But I don't have a daughter, and I have a granddaughter now. We have a granddaughter, and I would not promote to her that she go to college, get a good job, do all these things. I would ask her what she's interested in. I would never say to a kid, what do you want to be? I would observe what they like to do. I would talk about it. I would say, what do you like to do? And then if I could, I would help make an opportunity for that, right? If she becomes very artistic, I would send her to a course where she could go, maybe a 4-week course in art, right? I wouldn't say go to college for art. I would say I would help her try it out. My son came to me one time and he said, I want to move to Colorado and be a ski instructor, be a snowboard instructor. So I bought him a ticket to Vail, sent him out there for 2 weeks. After 4 days, he wanted to come back. And he was old on his own. He was out of the house. He was 19, I think, at least 19, maybe 18. And he said, I wanna do this. And so I said, all right. He said to me, he raced motocross growing up, so he said he wanted to win he wanted to be in A class the next season. He wanted to win A class. And so we rented a motorhome, packed up, went down to the Bailey Motocross School in South Carolina, and were there for a week, and he trained, and then he said, I don't want to do this. It's too hard. And I'm like, all right. Evidently I was pretty upset, like, hey, you got it. You're working for it. You got to keep working for it, because that's my ethic, is that you work for it. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get anything,
But
because
he
you
had
get
his first girlfriend, and you were trying to get him to see beyond that.
Well, I wasn't trying to get him to see anything. He came to me and said, I want to win A class. And so I said, all right, well, if you're going to do that, we got to go to a school. We got to go do a training camp. We got to go
prepare you.
You need more training than I can give you. I've never raced professional motocross. I was never that good. And so I could only bring him to a certain point. So I said, we'll go to a professional school. And while we were there, Bailey, he was like, your kid is great. If he keeps going, if he listens, and he did listen, he did make adjustments. He
did great.
He did phenomenal. Well, he was beating kids that were racing pro. He was telling me that. He was like, look at what he's doing. Now that kid races pro already, and look what he's doing, and look what your son is doing. And so, and in motocross, I did let it go. I didn't force him to stay in, because in motocross you can die, and it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for people that don't want to do it. And so when he said he didn't want to do it, he said I yelled at him, but we're on our drive back. I was probably upset, and maybe I did yell a little bit, but I had just spent, $8,000 to $10,000 taking him to a camp. So, and we, he didn't race, and that's fine. But, I wouldn't push unless the person wants a push, right? I wouldn't, make them. It's like I would never take a kid and throw him off the dock and say, now swim. I wouldn't make a traumatic event to get somebody to do something like that. Now when my son didn't want to jump a jump in motocross, I said, well, you can't race if you're not going to jump. And so I told him I was going to sell his bike, and I put it up for sale in the front yard. And then he decided, I went in the house, he got all geared up and went and did the jump, and he said, no, my bike's not for sale because I jumped.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, there you go.
So that's a son, but let me ask another question.
For a daughter, I would do something like that, but I wouldn't send her to college for 4 years for art or for something like that.
Do you think this is true, that as is natural for women to want to nest and nurture?
Absolutely.
It is equally natural for men to want to provide and protect.
Absolutely.
So I think what happened, if I'm looking at my own scenario, because I was definitely raised to get the good education, to get the job, have your own bank account, don't count on a guy, don't trust a guy, essentially.
Well, your parents had a terrible marriage. Let's be honest about all of it.
Yeah, but
that's why they both were teaching you the wrong things.
But I don't think this is unusual for women of my generation in particular, and it's continued, is what I'm saying. And so what that teaches is, don't trust a man, and that trust is essential, though. What I've learned is that trust is essential, that helps you to feel empowered to be the provider and protector. If I don't trust you, then you're like, the reactions I've gotten, what I've understood is like, she doesn't appreciate, trust, or respect me. Why am I doing all this? Not that you act that way overtly, but I think some guys do. I think eventually they're like, it's all for naught anyway.
It's very irresponsible of a parent, especially a female parent, the mother to say, don't trust men.
Well, and I don't even think, sometimes it is said, and it's implied. It's implied.
It's very irresponsible.
Men are not trustworthy.
Because if you go on a date, it's implicit that you're trusting someone.
Instead of teaching them how to choose a good guy.
Yeah. There needs to be lessons, educational, conversations about it if it's a problem.
Right. So I think it's more of a product of my generation. I'm not calling out my parents because I think it was so ubiquitous. among
No.
families.
That's what women do too. You can't blanket statement a whole generation.
I think that's why these questions come up for
Yeah,
women.
because there's a hell of a lot of people, and there's a lot of good people, and there's a lot of people that are mindless, and there is quite a few bad people. But you can't just blanket a whole generation. I mean, while feminism was on its ramp up, there was women that stayed home with their kids. There was women that my mom literally was babysitting women's kids that were going to work. Women were going to work. My mom was babysitting their kids, and my mom was being ridiculed by those women.
Right, but
while she's taking care of their kids.
Your mom was very much raised in an environment that was the norm and acceptable and expected.
Yeah, but my mom went to VOTEC. She went to technical school. She worked at the Federal Reserve before her and my dad. When my parents were married, she had a high level. I mean, she was dealing with. I'm just saying this. Hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's a very different generation where that was still the norm. It was very much still the norm that a woman who was coming of age in the 60s. You were born in 1969, just for a reference. It was still very much the norm that a woman of your mom's generation would be a stay-at-home mom and homemaker.
Yes, so we lived in a neighborhood in Coon Rapids where there was, 110 homes, and almost everybody in the neighborhood got divorced except for two or three sets of parents. So I mean, your comparisons are not accurate. You're stating one thing, but then the reality was totally different. My parents stayed together through all of the bullshit. My parents stayed together through all their friends getting divorced. My parents stayed together through all of the. My parents never once asked me what I want to do when I grow up. My parents never once said, which college are you going to go to? What are you going to, they watched. And I was so out there. My brother went to college. He wanted to play football. So my parents were like, the college he got into to play football in was University of Minnesota Crookston, right? So he went up there to play football. After the football season ended, he came home because that was the only reason he went to college, was to play football, right? And when he got home, my parents were like, what are you doing here? And my brother said, football is over. And my parents were like, yeah, but the school season goes until this date. And he's like, well, I don't want to go to school. I want to play football. And my parents didn't yell at him, scream at him, didn't do any of that kind of stuff. They just said, they just realized what he was doing. I think there's such a subtle genius in my parents, as non-confrontational and as non-interactive as they are. There's such a subtleness to it. And I think these parents nowadays are so overt. It's like the tattoo generation, right? They get all these tattoos and they think they're unique, but the whole generation's getting tattoos. It's like, not all of them, but they're just like, they'll all walk around next to a bunch of tattooed people, and thinking that they're unique because their tattoos are different.
What would you say to a couple where the woman, they're a younger couple, but they have a couple young kids, and they bought into the whole, both people have to work, the big lifestyle and so forth, but the woman is like exhausted, realizing she really wants to be home with her kids while they're young, but the guy doesn't see it. Like, he's like, no, you got to keep working for whatever reason. What would you, if you could counsel that couple, what would you say to them?
I would say that that's a man that says he'll die for his kids, but he won't live for them.
How's that?
That's a short.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, how is that?
More.
What do you mean, how is that? You have to prioritize. A lot of people do more for their animals than they do for their kids. They're more thoughtful about their animal than their kids. And not everybody, not most, but a lot. And the thought process is not there. I understand, so a lot of them have to work because they both went to college, right, which is freaking ridiculous. It's ridiculous, the amount of debt that these people have. Mm-hmm. And you didn't go to school because you looked at how much debt you were going to have and the job you decided you wanted to do, and you were like, it's going to take me 30 years to pay this off. You know, and a lot of people nowadays, they're all crying, oh, pay my school, you know. Well,
yeah, I took the math skills I learned in school to do that math.
yeah, guess what? If the government pays your school, you are going to pay insane amounts of money for the rest of your life for everything that you need, because the government can't put out money that it doesn't need repaid, and it's going to be repaid by you and your kids and your grandkids. And people don't understand basic economics. All these smart people that go to college that don't understand basic economics that you should have learned in high school, and you can learn from reading one book. You can learn from reading one small economic book, you know, the von Mises School of Economics. You know, you can learn.
So how would you coach the woman to talk to her man? Because I think as women, sometimes, especially when we're really caught up in a scenario, it's hard to appropriately get our message across. So how would you suggest that woman who wants to stay at home with her kids and her husband's like, nope.
I'll settle down and give you a real explanation.
Yeah.
Okay. When a man and woman are together and they're doing stuff, right? And they're living a certain way. And all of a sudden the woman wants to back out, right? She wants to stop working. She wants to, the guy is viewing it as laziness. The guy is viewing it as an inability to strive. The guy is going to view it in multiple negative ways.
Even if it's, I want to stay home with our kids.
Yeah, you know, a guy that thinks his wife needs to work in lieu of them having kids, even having kids, is not thinking properly as a man.
Why is that?
Well, he doesn't understand the training that his kids need. He doesn't understand the training that his kids need that are going to they're not going to get anywhere else. You know, nowadays your kids are going to be trained in LGBTQ2A something processes from the time they're going to the daycare. The evil people are out there, and they are infiltrating every genre of child care and education and cartoons and everything across the board. You think a guy who is not trying to figure out with you how to make it happen is part of the problem? I think he's looking at the debt that needs to be paid and the lifestyle they live, and she's probably not going to want to take a huge hit in lifestyle. You know, if she sits down and says that, then he needs to sit down and say, okay, our lifestyle is going to be cut in half. But immediately.
But even if I'm saying the guy who won't even talk about it.
Well, I don't know.
Because if he'll sit down and talk about it.
Specific scenarios don't count, right? General wellness foundational concepts are what counts, right? So if you're going to cut your working life in half, and let's say she's making a third and he's making 2/3, okay, well, then directly your lifestyle is going to be cut by a third, and it has to start months, if not a year, before you do it, because you're not going to be able to cut your lifestyle that quickly and catch up to what the repercussions are. And so I would say women, I'm talking to the women now, I'm giving a lesson. Before you have kids, have that conversation.
Yeah.
Before you have kids. And if you are part of what you talked about, you're part of this group of women that lives on the fact that you're independent and can take care of yourself, don't get married. Just don't. Or change your mind before you get married and realize that your marriage is going to be a partnership. Your marriage is going to be each of you giving 100% in your own areas. And you might make more money than your husband, but if that's going to end at some point in the future, then it needs to be parsed properly, right?
You need to start living off of his income and save yours, or
do something with yours that enhances.
Start a home business or something.
Invest, do whatever you can to invest in small businesses in your community. Do something that's going to return money off of that income that you're making right now.
So I think where I was extremely fortunate is that while I was raised with this feminist dogma, I still listened to my inner guide. And when I met you, there was a sense of, I already had experience in life of, you need to take this opportunity. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. This is going to be tough, or...
You might be slightly off camera. I didn't check, but all right.
So, like, making the opportunity for myself to go to Brazil. It was a scholarship, you know, I had to earn money, you know, there were all sorts of hurdles, other opportunities in life, you know, to the degree that you have them as a teenager. And, or like when I bought my first car and I asked my dad to write a check for it. He's like, do you have the money? I'm like, yeah, it's just I don't have a checking account.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was spending the last dollar basically that I had, but it was like, this is a good deal. Like, I see this is what I wanted.
Well, and you had 2 or 3 jobs at that time.
Right, but it was age appropriate kind of listening to intuition.
It was what, a $700 car?
$1,400.
14. Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, back in
Roland.
1999.
Roland, was that your escort or your?
It was the escort.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, fortunately, I'd had enough experience to listen to that internal guide. So when I met you, there was a sense in me like, I may not have this kind of opportunity again. Like it,
now, if I was your dad, here's what I would have done. With the car, right? I would not want my daughter in an escort, right? Wouldn't want my daughter being an escort either.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want her in a Ford Escort or a Ford. What'd you have before that? A Festiva?
I was driving their Festiva, which is even smaller.
Which is even smaller. So I would at least get a 4-door sedan, and I would take your $1,400 and I would say, I'm going to match your $1,400 since you saved up that much. Good job, congratulations, well done. And I would say, let's go find you a car that is a little bit safer, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody needs to pry their daughter out of a sardine can, right?
So where I was going with it is, I think I was very fortunate having that sense of self at a very young age. And by self, I mean there was a discerning between what I was being programmed to think and what my internal calling and
you were the first child too.
And sense of what I wanted in life was, because even after I said that I'm going to be with you and we were going to get married, that there was still a lot of hubbub in the family. You know, my parents, my grandma expected me to go to college, and
it's a very polite way of saying it.
But I had done the math, I had done the soul searching, and this is where I think, especially the women my age, you know, as we were coming of age, it's hard to go against that programming, and especially going against your parents. But the sooner you can have that sense of self and knowing what you want, the better. You know, because what I hear is what is happening with women my age and younger is you're following the social programming, and then all of a sudden your own instincts pop up and you're like, oh yeah, that is actually what I want. But you're too piled in debt, you're too engrossed in your career. It gets harder and harder to make that shift.
Yeah, it's probably a good place to end it.
Okay.
Let's go biking.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been great weather.
It's noon now.
High noon.
We're at the hottest part of the day almost. Awesome. By the time we get to the track, it'll be 1. So
yeah, it depends on which track we go to.
Oh, that's right. We got to discuss that. I thought we were going to Leb, but all right.
All right, more to talk about.
Subscribe.
In the car.
John
Bye.
and Tara Podcast.
Take care.
Go to Wifey School on YouTube.
Wifey Wake Up, No Makeup. I actually don't have makeup on today either.
Wifey Wake Up, No Makeup Podcast.
And we get into these just short podcasts. I get into 15 minutes.
15-minute podcast
each
every
morning,
day.
just something to help inspire you, take you through your day.
Live at 6 a.m.
6 a.m. Central.
Woo!
Yep.
Nice.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Found it. Boom.
Bam.
All right.